All right, so in this video, we're going to go over warm-up number 13 and warm-up number 14, which is Monday's bell work. We're going to do 2 in one day because we do have the NWEA later this week. So I want you to remember that if you are just handwriting these warm-ups, you should be showing your work, and you should write down the question and the answer if you didn't print it. So that way you know what you're reviewing for when you look back at this information before the EOC. So which set of ordered pairs represent y as a function of x? And remember, when we're talking about a function, we're talking about for each input value, your x value, there's only one output value. So we're looking specifically at our x values in our ordered pair. So in A, we have this -5 as an x value, a 6, an 8, and a -5. Well, because I have two -5s, so the same x value, if they don't have the same y value, it is not a function. And since 3 is not the same as 4, it is not a function. So let's look at letter B. We have 9, and then we have another 9. Well, again, we have two of the same x values with different y values. Because our y values are not the same, we do not have a function, because for each input we can have exactly one output. So we'll cross that one off. C, we have 6, 7, 8, and 9. None of our x values repeat. Even though our y values repeat, 8 and 8, that's okay. You can have the same output for a different input. You just can't have the same input. So C is going to be a function. And D obviously is not a function because all of the x values are the same, and so we can cross that one out. For number 2, there are 7 more girls than boys in 8th grade. There is a total of 53 students in 8th grade. How many girls are in 8th grade? So we have 7 more girls than boys, and there's a total of 53. So what I did is I made a chart just so you could kind of visually see it. So 8th grade students, we have a number of boys. We don't know how many. And we have a number of girls, but it's 7 more than the number of boys. In total, we have 53. So I would set up an equation to solve for B. So I'm going to have B, the number of boys, plus B plus 7, because that's how many girls we have, and that's going to equal 53. So now that I have my equation, I'm going to simplify it. So B plus B is 2B. Plus 7 is equal to 53. I subtract 7 from both sides and get 2B is equal to 46. So that means B is equal to 23. 23 is the number of boys that we have in 8th grade, but we want to find how many girls are in 8th grade. Since we're looking for the number of girls, we're going to have to add 7 to the number of boys that we have, and we get 30. So our answer here is D, 30. Moving on to our function of the day on warm-up 13. This is a pretty easy one. We have y equals 0.5x. So I'm going to take this function and I'm going to fill in my x values to find my y values. So y is equal to 0.5x. So if I'm going to plug in a -2 for my x value, I'm going to plug it into the equation. So 0.5 multiplied by -2 is going to give me a -1. And I'm going to fill that -1 into the chart. And then I'm going to graph that point. When I fill in 0 for my x value, f of 0 is equal to 0.5 times 0. Well, anything times 0 is 0. And I can mark that point. First of all, I'm going to fill it in for my y-intercept, because anytime my x is 0, my y is 0 for this function. And I'm going to fill it in on the graph. Then I'm going to find f of 2. F of 2 is equal to 0.5 multiplied by 2 because I'm just filling it in for x. 0.5 multiplied by 2 is 1. I can fill it in on my table and graph it. Finally, I have 4. F of 4 is equal to 0.5 of 4, so half of 4, which is going to be 2. Fill in my table, graph my point, and then I have to find f of 5. Well, half of 5 is going to be 2.5. I could graph it, but it's just too hard to graph, so I'm just going to leave these 4 points that were in my original table, and there's my line. Now let's go over warm-up number 14. The population of a town is currently 12,000. The function p equals 12,000 plus 5t squared can be used to estimate p, the population of the town t years from now. Based on the function, which statement is true? Okay, so A says the town is increasing at a constant rate. Well, a constant rate means a linear function, and if we had a linear function, then it would be p is equal to 12,000 plus 5t. But we don't have 5t, we have 5t squared. The t squared is telling us it's a quadratic function, so we can cross out A. B, the population of the town will reach 12,500 people 10 years from now. Well, if we plug in 12,500, or we're not going to plug that in, but if we plug in this 10 years from now for our t, do we get 12,500? So I'm going to find p of t, because that's how many years. That's going to equal 12,000 plus 5 multiplied by t squared. So I would square t first. 10 times 10 is 100. 5 times 100 is 500. And 12,000 plus 500 is going to equal 12,500, which is the option, is what they're telling me the population is going to be in 10 years. So B is our correct answer. If you look at letter C, the population is increasing by 5 people every year. If they say 5 people every year, that's a linear function because that's a constant rate. The population of the town will increase and then decrease. Well, that would make sense for a quadratic function, saying that it would increase and then decrease. But that's going to look like this. And our quadratic function has a positive a term, which is a positive 5. So our quadratic function would open up, not down. So if anything, it would decrease and then increase. So that's why D is not an answer. Number 2, the slope and y-intercept of graph F were changed to make the graph of G as shown below. Which statement describes the changes that were made to the graph F to make the graph of G? So our graph F is this line right here. Our graph of G is this second line. Which statement describes the changes that were made? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the linear equation for both lines. Okay, so first I have to find the slope of my f of x, which is going to be, I went up 3 and over 1, which is a slope of 3. And my y-intercept is 0. So my function, my linear function, is f of x is equal to 3x. Because my slope is 3 and my y-intercept is 0. For my g of x function, I'm going to look at my slope, which is negative 3 and plus 2, or negative 1.5. And my y-intercept is 2. So my function, my linear function, would be g of x is equal to negative 1.5x plus 2. So in letter A, it says the slope was multiplied by negative 1.5 and the y-intercept was increased by 2. Well, if I multiply 3 times a negative 1.5, I'm going to get a negative 4.5. Well, in my g of x function, I have a slope of negative 1.5, so that is not my answer. The slope was multiplied by negative 1.5. We already know that it has nothing to do with that slope of negative 1.5. And it says the y-intercept was decreased by 2. So that would be negative 4.5x minus 2, which is wrong both for my slope and my y-intercept. Letter C says the slope was multiplied by negative 0.5 and the y-intercept was increased by 2. Well, the increase by 2 is correct, and if I multiply that my slope times a negative 0.5, then yes, I do get negative 1.5. So C is my correct answer here. D would not be the correct answer because it's decreased by 2 and we added 2. All right, that's it for your bell work for number 13 and 14. I'll see you.